Okay, I've started the recording. And Ellen, if you would like to give introductions, I would so deeply appreciate that.
Great, thanks, Laura. Yeah, and Trevor's going to help me out with getting some slides going for us. Good afternoon, everybody. We're really happy to be here sharing some space with you at the Chelmsford Library and having a great conversation this afternoon. So Speak Out, we are a community of speakers working to create a world free of homo, bi, and transphobia and other forms of prejudice by telling the truths of our lives. And we have been doing that since 1972. So next year, 2022 is our 50th anniversary, which we're very excited about. Yeah, we're one of the oldest LGBTQ plus organizations in the Boston area. SpeakOutBoston.org is our website, so please check us out there if you are interested in learning more about us. And this, I love sharing this slide because, you know, when in usual times, we are able to have these wonderful engagements in person with folks. And this really captures the spontaneity of those occasions when we have that real fun give and take with the audience. So our speakers traditionally go out to schools, colleges, businesses, faith communities, obviously libraries and all sorts of other organizations, public spaces. And we really love that, like I said, that immediacy of the in-person, but we've really enjoyed our online engagements as well. It's actually broadened our reach so that people can actually see us beyond the Boston area. So that's been really wonderful to do that. I do want to mention as well that we have our speaker training coming up. So if you know anyone, if you are someone who would like to tell your story as an LGBTQ plus person, we're going to be having our training at Suffolk University on Saturday, October 2nd. Again, you can check out speakoutboston.org for more information. It's a wonderful opportunity to spend the day together sharing stories. So in all of our engagements, we have a few ground rules that we go over real quickly at the beginning. Everyone is encouraged to communicate with respect, and that is true in the Zoom box as well. We speak for just ourselves, not for the entire LGBTQ plus community. Our community is very diverse, has many different experiences, many different opinions. So we are sharing of our own selves today. And then our long-term motto has always been, ask us anything. And we really do mean that. So you're going to have Jen and Trevor share their personal stories with you first. And then you can ask questions afterwards. You can ask questions about their stories, or obviously just questions about the LGBTQ community that you're interested in. Today's focus is to be more about gender and gender identity. So lots of time for us to discuss that together. So looking forward to this a lot. Thanks again for inviting us. And I'm going to pass you on to Jen, and we can get off our slides. There we go. Thanks so much, Trevor.
Thank you, Ellen. My name's Jen, and I'm a trans woman. And I didn't figure out I was transgender until I was 53 years old, thanks to the Oprah Winfrey show titled Born in the Wrong Body. That was in September of 2007. And over the next 4 or 5 months, I had to do a lot of research, tell my wife at the time, and also my children, who were both in college at the time. And over that time, I ended up getting divorced, unfortunately, and having to learn how to talk to my children again, because dad wasn't who they thought dad was, and it kind of put them in a state of shock at first. After getting divorced and moving out, though, I had to decide, what does transgender mean to me? And it took me a few years to really go through I wanted to do, who I was, and also during that time to take care of how my children felt. And even though I was divorced, also my ex. The first thing I actually did was I decided to dye my hair blonde, and that created a little bit of a shock at work because I was a high school teacher, and no one had ever seen me do something so drastic as that. And of course, my students started asking, why'd you dye your hair blonde? And I said, well, now that I'm divorced, I can really do anything to myself I want. And I always wondered what I'd look like as a blonde. And so I asked them, what do you think? And they said, well, you kind of look like a surfer dude from California. And I said, well, it's working for me then, isn't it? And they said, well, yeah. It's like, okay. So, first obstacle passed. I also stopped cutting my hair, so it started to grow, which took quite a while. It's to get to where it is now, took about 3 to 4 years of growth. I also started wearing a stud in my ears and also wearing a bracelet on my wrist. And I tried that out for a while. And during Friday nights every week, I would actually meet with a transgender support group, and we'd go out to a restaurant and then go out to a nightclub and dancing. And typically there would be anywhere from 10 to 30 people there. So safety in numbers when we went any place. Most of the time we were never in any danger at all. Most people seemed to very much accept us. After that first year of blonde hair, I decided I needed to at least change my face, starting with my nose. I had a broken nose from a middle school, and I hated it and couldn't breathe through it. So I went to a doctor who specialized in feminization surgery on faces, and asked him, what would you do if you were going to go halfway so I could kind of be androgynous and kind of fit into both a male and female role? And he gave me the laundry list of what it was and what it would cost. And then I said, what if I decided to go 100% as female as you could make me look? And I could weigh those two options. And it was really obvious to me very quickly that do it all or do nothing, because paying for surgery twice was way more expensive than paying for it once. So I had my face surgically altered over an 8-hour surgery. And that was the first operation that I had. And it was necessary because that's what everybody sees. The first part of your body they look at is your face when they meet you. And I went back to school that fall, having changed my name to Jennifer. And now I was dressing in women's clothes, going to work. And it was a little bit odd at first for me, but not for the school. The school that I was teaching in was known for being very progressive. It had the oldest LGBTQ club in the state at the time. And I knew I'd be accepted by all these students. And it was interesting because students came and talked to me. Many of them were past students, and they didn't care at all. One student who I had found out was trans came to me and said that they had their first role model in their life because of my transition in the school. My next thought was, what do I do next now that I am living as a woman? And I had to live a year before I could get approval for surgery. So I did, and I had my surgery so that I was legally female after that. But there was one really big obstacle left, and that's, what does being a woman mean to me? It's like we each get to define who we are in really many, many aspects. And I thought about it, and it's like, at first I was a little, can I still be the teacher I was? Because I was a woodworking teacher. I was known for being the guy's guy in the school. And can I continue to teach woodworking? Can I continue to work on cars, because I fix my own cars? Can I also continue to do building type projects on my own house and help other people? And it didn't take me long to realize that it's like, sure, I can do anything I want. It's whatever makes me happy is really how I should be. So to this day, I still engage in many things that are considered to be masculine activities. So I work on cars, I fix my house, I chop and split wood. But I'm very likely to be seen going out to dinner wearing a really cute little black dress also. So I'm me in many different ways all the time. And I think I'll stop right there and pass it on to Trevor.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Trevor Boylston, and I have to say I love the library engagements because I get to start my story with once upon a time in a land far away. There was a baby born, and the doctor held that baby up and smacked it on the bottom and said, "Congratulations, it's a girl." We all make mistakes. So I was born in South Carolina, but I grew up in Massachusetts up on the North Shore, and it was really an idyllic little place to grow up. My mother moved us up here when I was about 4, and we lived with her mom and stepdad. And all of the other kids that were my age in the neighborhood were boys too. So pretty perfect. We grew up doing the things that all little boys do, playing in the tide pools and catching the minnows and climbing trees and playing in mud puddles, jumping over fences that we shouldn't have been jumping over. It was great. It was great. So I was about 7 or 8 years old, and we were climbing over a fence, and I slipped, and I uttered something about a piece of anatomy that one of the other kids pointed out I didn't have because I was a girl. And that was really the first time that I realized I knew I was a boy, but no one else around me knew that. No one else around me could see that. And it led to the first periods of isolation in my life where all of a sudden I wasn't welcome to play with the boys at recess, but I didn't want to play with the girls. I turned into the smart kid that did my homework early and didn't have a lot of friends. And that really continued through adolescence. I can remember very distinctly the first time I felt gender dysphoria as a physical sensation, and it was on my 13th birthday. My mother took me to get my hair cut, and the stylist found out it was my birthday and gave me a gift, and that gift was a manicure. And at the time, I knew this was something that was very nice and very generous, but I was so uncomfortable with it, and I couldn't explain why, and I hated every single second of sitting there. I couldn't wait to get out the door and peel the paint off my nails because I was so uncomfortable. And I couldn't explain why. And I felt so guilty for hating it because I knew this was something nice. I knew this was something that was generous. And my mind couldn't reconcile the sensations that were coming through my body. I felt nauseous. I felt hot and sweaty, irritated, angry, and no way to explain it. I didn't have the words to explain it. We didn't have any transgender role models in my life. I didn't have any gay role models in my life. This was the 80s, early 90s, growing up in North Shore of Massachusetts. My neighborhood was predominantly white, straight families. There weren't any transgender people in television and movies that were positive role models. If there were transgender people, that was always a crime drama where the transgender person was a gotcha plot device or a sex worker. There wasn't a representation. There wasn't the language. I couldn't use Google to say, "Hey, Google, what am I?" because we didn't have smartphones. We didn't have a home computer. The language didn't exist, and I certainly didn't know to go to the library and look up books on gender identity. We didn't have the breadth of children's books that we have now that would have been accessible at a library that are out there today for kids. So it was very isolating growing up, and I thought, well, maybe when I go to college, it'll be different. I'll be able to get away. This town is the problem, not me. So I went to UVM. And realized very quickly that it was the same problem, just a different place with fewer familiar resources. I thought, well, if I come out as lesbian because I acknowledge that I'm attracted to women, maybe that's as far as it needs to go. I don't need to dig back into this part of me that says you're not in the right body. So I came out as a lesbian, and it helped, but it wasn't the full answer. I wasn't in the right bodies. I ended up leaving college and being so unsettled in my own skin, I couldn't settle into anything else. I jumped from job to job to job, always doing okay, not getting bad performance reviews, but never being able to settle into any role, never being able to really fully connect with coworkers and friends, even my family. I was holding at arm's length. Geez, I managed a movie theater. I was a lifeguard. I was a medic. I joined the Army. I left the Army. I worked as a bike messenger. I worked as a photographer, a security guard, customer service, just jumping from thing to thing to thing. Eventually, I ended up in a relationship with a woman that lasted a few years and turned abusive so slowly that I didn't recognize it for what it was until I confronted her about having an affair. And she beat me and left me on the floor of our house. And that was really bottom for me. I knew that I just wanted to go to sleep on the floor and not wake up in the morning. But I did wake up and I was faced with a choice. I think, I have to honestly say, if I had the willpower to crawl into the bathroom that night and open the medicine cabinet, I probably wouldn't have woken up that morning. But I did, and I knew that I was starting over, and I was starting over with nothing. And I was so tired that to even come forward and move forward with my life, I didn't have the energy to continue pretending to be someone I wasn't. I had to face my authentic, true self and come out. So having been isolated from my family for a while, I reached back out to my mom and I told her what was going on and reconnected with her. And she said, come home, we'll figure it out. I didn't recognize it at the time. She was grieving the daughter that she thought she had, and she needed to do that to make room for the son that she does have. And that took time, but she tried not to let it show. She tried to be supportive with pronouns and using the right name and trying to figure out what it meant to be an ally. And it took a little while for the rest of the family to come around. I had an aunt and uncle who didn't want it around their kids. Took decades to repair that relationship, and it will never be what it was before coming out. So I temped through my early transition. As I started my physical changes, I didn't want to have to explain it. I needed to figure out how to re-enter the workforce anyway after being isolated from a source of income during that relationship. And it was great because 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, my voice changed a little, my facial structure changed a little, I lost a little more hair on top and gained a little more on my chin. I didn't have to explain it to my coworkers, never had to connect and get to know them. But the further I got into my transition and I realized that I wasn't thinking about my gender every single day, that all of a sudden 3 days went by and then a week went by and then a month without really consciously thinking of my gender. And I realized that the temp assignment I've been working on had been there for 6 months, a year. I ended up being with that company for 8 years before moving on to the company I'm with now. And while I was never out at that company, it was really the first place I felt settled. And I started to be able to develop deeper, lasting relationships with people around me, with friends, with family, with coworkers. And that's really the first time in my life that I felt just present and normal. And while I never anticipated being out in my new workplace, the opportunity presented itself when confronting a coworker about telling transgender jokes. And I realized that I had an opportunity as an educator, that I was finally settled enough in my own skin that I could step back into that place of being out and being open with who I was. And it has probably been the best decision I made for my own career. Being out gave me a level of visibility in the company. It gave me access to change policy, to change the way we do construction of our bathrooms. It's given me access to help our leaders understand what their LGBT employees need. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had the space to be who I am. And I also recognize that I am seen as a straight white male in my company, married with a kid. And that voice, as Thomas's voice in the book, it's heard differently than it was as a female. And I do recognize that, and it has been interesting to see that change. So I'll leave my story there. The end is far from written. So I guess we have chapter 2, 3, 8 sequels, trilogies to write still. And I look forward to seeing how they turn out decades from now.